I'm Mark Dawson from the Self-Publishing Show, and this is Self-Publishing Spotlight, where we shine a light on the indie authors who are changing the world of publishing, one book at a time.
Hello and welcome to the Self-Publishing Spotlight. We meet indie authors at all stages of their careers and ask them a series of 5 questions. 5 questions about their process, their mistakes and their successes. 5 answers that will help you level up your own author career. My name's Tom Ashford and I'm part of the Self-Publishing Formula. Don't forget that you can get your self-publishing resource kit at selfpublishingformula.com/starter kit. This week's guest is Gary Collins. He's written 7 books in the nonfiction genre and he lives in the States. Welcome, Gary.
Thanks for having me on, Tom.
So do you want to start by talking about your nonfiction books?
Yeah, I have 6 that are indie published and 1 that's traditionally published through a place called Mother Earth News, which is a huge magazine publishing company, and they put on fairs throughout the country and I speak at. So my nonfiction books are basically self-help, DIY, motivational, a little bit of everything, personal finance, health is a big part of what I teach. So a little bit of everything.
Nice. And you mentioned consulting on a thriller novel or a couple of thriller novels?
Yeah, I've been consulting on 7 novellas with AC Fuller called The Crime Beat. We just released the 7th one yesterday.
Nice. Okay, well, if we dive into the 5 questions, the first one is, why do you write?
Because it's part of my life purpose. I've always been a teacher, kind of person who helps other people. I spent 20 years in military intelligence, the military, and as a federal law enforcement officer, special agent. And I've been a college professor, and I've owned a health company when I first got out, helping people, primarily athletes, high-end athletes. So it's kind of my calling to write, in a way, to share this information. And it came about organically is the best way to put it. My life purpose found me.
Nice.
If you would have asked me if I would be writing self-help books 10 years ago, I would have said you're out of your mind. But here I am.
Nice. And is there a particular topic that the self-help books address?
There are numerous. There's kind of 2 different splits. I have my book called Going Off the Grid, which pushed me into the self-help world. It was a book about my off-grid house project that I never intended to write. That's one of the best books you can write, the one you never intended to write, I found. I was doing an interview, got asked several questions about health because that's why I was there. And now host asked what I was up to. And I said, I'd bought 20 acres in Northeast Washington and I was going to build a house off the grid, get back to my roots. I grew up very rurally and got a flood of questions and had just started the process of the property was raw. So I just built the road. So I documented and went, hey, I think maybe I should write about this. People are interested. And there you go, off to the races in a different path.
Nice. Why, not why did you go traditionally published? You went traditionally published in the first place. What made you want to switch to indie publishing afterwards?
No, I've always been indie.
Oh, okay.
I started indie. I had some pretty poor publishing deals offered to me early on in my career. Most of them were tell-all books about the federal government,
right,
which I refused 100% and said, no way, never going to happen. But I independently published from the very beginning. I did 3 real short health books 10 years ago, roughly started. And those weren't even supposed to be, those were for clients, but I had a marketing guy say, just throw them on Amazon. And as everyone knows now, don't do that. Just don't throw things on Amazon. Lesson learned. But the traditionally published one is through a relationship I have with Mother Earth News Fair and Ogden Publishing.
Right.
So it was not a monetary decision. It was more of a loyalty decision.
Okay. Would you take a traditional publishing contract if you were offered it?
Yeah, if it was on my terms. It just depends. It's a tricky question because most traditionally publishing offices, I actually got 2 last year from more boutique publishing companies, and they're usually just god awful. Yeah. A couple $1,000, it's still a couple thousand US pounds. And you basically make nothing. It's 80 cents a book or something, and they own the rights. And I just don't see the point now that I've been indie publishing for so long. I have a system. I can make money doing it. I don't need their help.
Yeah. Okay. Well, question number 2 is how do you write? So, how do you approach writing nonfiction?
I do it very differently. I'm kind of known for that. Even the way I run my company, I own my print copies, which we can maybe get into.
Yeah.
I own everything. For me, I don't write upon a schedule. I'm very disciplined. Part of what I write about is discipline and getting things done. So I don't have to write every single day to stay on course. What I do is I have an outline that I put together over time. So it's written outline. And then when I'm ready for the project, I sit down and I write it. And I usually get the project done 2 to 4 weeks, but I don't interrupt it. I just write. I don't do anything else far as, any other projects. I just get the rough draft, get the manuscript done. And then I'll go over it and then I kick it to my editor. So there's no schedule to it. It's per project, but I'm also a very outdoors guy. So the book is pretty much written in my mind by the time I sit down because I'm thinking about it up until the time I write.
Okay. Now you mentioned like owning the physical paperback copies. What did you mean by that?
I don't use print on demand anymore. I stopped doing that a couple years ago. I have a deal with a distribution company, publishing company actually, but I turned the publishing side down and said we worked out a deal on the distribution side here in the States. So we print in batches. I own and pay for the print batches, and they stay in their warehouse, and we ship those worldwide wherever they need to go, even to Amazon. So I am able to control the printing. It's a little scary. Mistakes have happened. In a recent book they did, and you end up printing a couple thousand mistakes. Oof. But at first I used to it was scary, especially on this last one, but no one's really complained. If you're writing and doing the information correctly, and there are mainly errors that most people don't catch, it's a risk. But for me, it's the right thing to do because I control it. My customers get a book from me and it's done on ethically derived paper. So it's an important part of what I do.
Yeah.
It takes the power back. You gain the power back. And I teach a lot of that, of free will and living the life you want. Yeah. And so I try to incorporate all my own systems into everything I do. So I own it. It's me, not, I'm the brand, I'm the company. It's not Amazon. It's not some Apple, yeah. It's me who controls it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not too dissimilar a system that from what the traditional publishers do themselves. It's just that you're in control and you have ownership instead of them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, question number 3 is, are you a full-time author? If you are, how did you get there? And if you aren't, what steps are you taking to make it happen?
Well, I do make a living as an author. So I would be considered a full-time author, but being in the nonfiction, we're a little different. I have multiple streams of income through my business, primarily speaking, consulting. I also have a health supplement line that I've had for years and years and years that I continue to have so many customers. I can't get rid of it and I won't. It's still very big part of what I teach is the health side and also writing. So I have multiple streams of what I do, which is nice because if Amazon changes an algorithm, I'm not going to starve to death.
Yeah.
Which is an upside. But no, I would be considered a full-time author, I guess.
Okay. Well, question number 4 is, what mistakes do you think you've made and what have you got right?
Oh boy, I've made a lot of mistakes. Probably my biggest mistake was trying to do it all on my own in the beginning. I'm pretty hard-headed and I don't have a background in publishing or writing. Like I said, I've got a bachelor's in criminal justice, a master's in forensic science, and an AS in exercise science. There's no literary degrees and there are English degrees. So I had to learn this the hard way. I built everything from absolute scratch, bootstrapped it. I paid for everything on my own, didn't put things on credit cards or anything like that. But one of the biggest mistakes I made, and there weren't a lot of them until SPF came around, there was some, but taking a course. I got burnt by a local teacher / course, I guess. Yeah. And I decided that I didn't need to deal with that anymore and tried to do it all on my own. And until a friend of mine mentioned SPF and we both ended up taking it, it was probably not taking a course earlier on the basics. That would be the biggest mistake. And in the beginning, throwing books on Amazon, just throwing them out there. You can't get rid of them. I mean, I've taken the digital versions off, but there's used copies of those books that are, like I said, 8-9 years old, still floating around. They won't die. There's nothing I can do about it. Luckily, the content was pretty good. So, but they make me cringe. They just make me absolutely cringe.
Well, have you got any success stories?
Depends. I mean, I'm lucky. I get to do this for a living. Putting out a book that I never intended to write, that the book found me, and I consider that a huge success.
Yeah.
Letting the business model find itself instead of forcing it. And as a former criminal investigator, I investigated quite a few white collar criminals at the end. And one thing that makes you do desperate things is a desperate life. And I've found if people start businesses or start writing and go, I need to make money now, put you in a very precarious position. You'll do things you never thought you would do to eat.
Yeah.
So that was a success story, is what letting it happen. And that book to this day, is my bestseller. It's been an Amazon bestseller for 2-3 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. Okay, well, question number 5 is, what's your final piece of advice for authors starting out in indie publishing?
For me, it's take your time and work on the craft. I was lucky in the beginning too. I had Stephen Pressfield actually helped me out in the beginning before he was really well known in his blog. He was already well known in Hollywood and stuff and as an author, but he wasn't. So I emailed him and he gave me some really great advice. And his advice was just work on the craft, get better, and always be striving to be better. So with what I do right now, I'm rewriting all my books, going back through and redoing them. And I plan to continue to redo them until I feel they're right. I think that's the biggest part of it, is if you're going to be an author, yeah, you're a business person, but you're a creative. And you have to balance those two and never let the writing side, the business side, overtake the writing side, in the sense that you kind of lose touch with why you started doing it in the first place.
Yeah.
I guess is the best way to put it, because then you end up in a life of what you wanted to get away from, right? Most people become writers so we can do the things we want to do. We can live our life. We can sit in our pajamas from, 7 a.m. till 5 p.m. and write if we want to.
Yeah.
That's why we do it. And I think once you turn it into a grinding business, it becomes, and I've done it at times, it becomes unpleasant.
Yeah. That's good advice. That's good perspective, actually. Yeah. Well, that's it. That's your 5 questions, Gary. You are off the hook, as I say.
Well, I appreciate it, Tom.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
That's it for this week's Self-Publishing Spotlight. Don't forget that you can get your free self-publishing resource kit at selfpublishingformula.com/starter kit. And if you want to appear as a guest on this show, send us brief details about yourself and your writing at selfpublishingformula.com/spotlight-guest. I'm Tom Ashford, and I'll see you again next week.